Hi, all. Welcome to Healthy Living with Dr. EE. Do you often encounter health misinformation and myths in your daily life? Your health shouldn't be taken so lightly. By learning correct health concepts, you can give your family and yourself a better quality of life. We are pleased to have Dr. EE Jong here to share how you can safeguard your health and your family's health through a healthy diet and lifestyle. Before we begin the event, please be reminded that the content is copyrighted. No recording or sharing is allowed. Let us all welcome our special guest for today, Dr. EE Jong.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your Saturday morning to listen to my talk. Now, it's been a while since our last live stream, so I'm excited to have this opportunity to once again share all sorts of knowledge with you.
Dr. EE, natural food has been the fad lately. A lot of people think that natural equals good. But is this really the case? Does natural mean better and safer?
So when you're looking at these, health trends, it is a thing that you mentioned. A lot of people will go, well, does natural actually mean better or healthier or safer? And is it a better choice over these unnatural or synthetic drugs? Now, nature has been very good to us. Nature has given us everything we need to survive: shelter, food, water, plus a lot of extra things to keep life comfortable. So a lot of people, they have this feeling that nature is pure and inherently superior, and this belief affects the decisions they make about their health. We often see natural labeled on a product and assume that the product is safe, clean, or somehow better, but that's not always the case. So when you're looking at all of these natural foods, you just have to remember, just because something is natural doesn't mean that it's better or even okay for us to use. Not all natural things are safe or harmless. There's some obvious examples. For example, like poison ivy. It's natural, but it's really not good for you. Heavy metals are natural. Asbestos, uranium, those are natural too. Tobacco, opium poppy, coronavirus, Botox, arsenic, lead, poisonous mushrooms, etc. All of these things, they're all natural, or they all come from natural sources, but they're not very good for us. So there's this huge emphasis on everything being clean or green or natural. People have this idea that just because something is natural or because it was extracted from something natural, that means that it's good or harmless, or it's not going to negatively affect the body or carry a lot of side effects. For example, one of the most common supplements on the market is vitamins, and one of the really popular ones is vitamin C. So, vitamin C is great. We do actually need vitamin C. But if you look at all of the supplements, a lot of times they'll be like it's natural or it comes from natural sources, like it's extracted from a natural plant like an orange or something. And people will look at this and they think, oh, because it's extracted from a natural source, it's fine and it's not going to cause any side effects. But that's not the case at all. So when you're looking at all of these things that come from natural sources, you have to keep in mind that once you take it out of the food, it's no longer the same. So another example is things like organic foods. A lot of people will pick organic foods because they believe they're pesticide free. But that's not true. Organic doesn't actually mean pesticide free. The key factor in chemicals being cleared for use on organic crops is whether or not they occur naturally. In fact, organic farmers are permitted to use natural pesticides. And you just have to remember, a pesticide is a pesticide. It's designed to kill off insects. So natural pesticides could be just as harmful or even more harmful than synthetic pesticides. For example, spinosad comes from a soil bacteria, and this causes neurotoxicity in insects. And in animal studies, it affected the thyroid glands and immune cells of those animals. Solanine is produced by potatoes as they turn green. So this is why you can't eat green potatoes, or why eating green potatoes will make you ill. It's because of this substance. And this is also used as a natural pesticide. Rhodonone occurs in the roots and stems of some plants as a sort of natural pesticide. So of course, we humans, we took it and we're using it as a pesticide. It can cause Parkinson's disease-like symptoms and is potentially lethal. So another idea people have is that chemicals, they think that, chemicals is something that is bad. A lot of people will turn to these natural labels because they're trying to avoid chemicals, because they perceive chemicals as something bad or something that will worsen their health. So today I like to explain a little bit about chemicals and get rid of this conception that chemical equals bad. From a chemistry point of view, pretty much everything is a chemical. The whole world is full of chemicals. The human body is made of oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, carbon, calcium, phosphorus, etc., all linked together into different molecules and chemicals. Water is a chemical. Apple, pears, even the air we breathe, it's all got chemicals in it. And if you look online, there's all sorts of natural cleaning methods that they have, and they all use things like lemons or vinegar or water. That's all chemicals still. So you're just replacing one chemical with another chemical. But a lot of people will go, oh, you know what? If it's got chemicals, then why don't I use something more natural? But even if you extract something out of a natural plant, like in my earlier example, if you extract vitamin C from an orange, well, it's still a chemical. It's not going to be natural in the sense that it's no different than vitamin C synthesized in a laboratory. So vitamin C has got a defined molecular structure. If you took vitamin C from an orange and vitamin C from a lab and you looked at it underneath a microscope, there's not going to be any difference because vitamin C is vitamin C. What makes vitamin C is the molecular structure, is that arrangement of the atoms all together. It's not the origin. All right, so vitamin C from an orange is the same as vitamin C you synthesize in a laboratory. But that doesn't mean that the origin doesn't matter. It still does matter, but only if you're going to eat the wholesome plants. As soon as you start extracting things from the plants, it's no longer wholesome, and it loses a lot of the benefits you would get if you took in the entire plant instead. So when it comes to nutrients, you're not looking at nutrients in a vacuum. You don't just want that one vitamin. For example, if you're eating an orange, you don't want just the vitamin C in the orange. You do want the vitamin C, but you want everything else that's also contained within the orange. All of the other nutrients, the phytochemicals, all of that's within that orange. It's about that complexity, that balance of nutrients inside of an orange. So, while we can replicate vitamin C in a lab, we can't replicate that perfect blend of nutrients inside an orange because the orange has that naturally. And that's what makes natural food so precious, not just because it comes from nature or just because it's natural. It's not about the origin, but that balance, that wholesomeness of the entire plant food. Because nature is genius. Nature has created an orange with vitamin C and all sorts of nutrients that we need. There's all sorts of nutrients inside of an orange or even other natural foods that we, even with our modern technology, we still don't know about that yet. So who are we to say that one thing is the most important out of all of the other nutrients out there? Now, another thing we want to know is that the dose is what makes the poison. Whether or not something is harmful depends a lot on the dosage. For example, even for good things, if you have too much of it, it's going to be harmful for you. So everyone knows, we need water to survive. But even water can be harmful and even deadly if you drink too much too quickly. So a lot of people, especially athletes, they're concerned about dehydration. But overhydration is also a real concern. Any chemical, natural or man-made, even ones that are supposed to be good for you, will be harmful if you take enough of them. Anything, if you take enough of it, will be toxic. For example, vitamin A is good for you, but if you have too much of it, it's still not a good idea. For example, vitamin A and beta carotene, it can have different effects depending on whether it was taken as sort of a supplement, inside a pill form or as part of a whole food. An overdose of vitamin A and beta carotene has been shown to have a lot of side effects, which include things like bone weakness, liver toxicity. It can cause harm to a developing baby or an increased risk of lung cancer. So when you're popping these vitamin pills, it's really easy to have too much of it, especially because a lot of these supplements, they have incredibly high doses. It's part of the marketing tactic. They will go on the label, this one will give you 2,000% of what you need in a day. That's excessive. You really don't need that much. But you look at those numbers and you think, oh, this one has more than this brand, so I'm gonna buy theirs instead. But when you're taking these pills, it's really, really easy to have too much. But that's not so much the case with wholesome foods. With wholesome foods, you are getting the vitamins you need, but in more appropriate amounts. So while vitamin A doesn't exist naturally inside plants, it does exist naturally in a different form, like beta carotene. It's an important nutrient in plant foods, and it can be converted by the body into vitamin A. So there's no evidence found that eating foods such as a carrot or a tomato can cause harm to a fetus or all of these other side effects. And when beta carotene is eaten as part of a wholesome food, such as a carrot or a tomato, it's got a lot of beneficial effects that you don't really get when you're taking vitamins in a pill form. For example, like decreasing the risk of cancers of the lung, mouth, the pharynx, larynx, part of your breathing tube, and esophagus, and decreasing the risk of eye disease. Right, but while you can say that about good things, you can also say that about bad things as well. So too much of a healthy thing can cause issues. On the other end of the scale, just because something bad is present doesn't mean that it's actually going to cause any harm. For example, apples contain amygdalin, which can release cyanide in the body. Pears contain formaldehyde. Potatoes, especially green potatoes, contain solanine, and things like cucumbers, they contain cucurbitacin E, which has cytotoxic effects. Now, all of these natural chemicals, they're toxic to us, but only in higher amounts. So just because a chemical is present doesn't mean that it's present in the amounts necessary to cause harm. So just take apples as an example. You're going to have to finally chew and eat about 200 apple seeds, or about 40 apple cores to receive a fatal dose. And let's be real here. I sincerely doubt that anyone listening here right now has a real concern about eating too many apple cores. So a lot of drugs, they actually come from nature, or they come from natural sources. In the United States, out of the top 150 prescription drugs, at least 118 are based on natural sources. For example, Digitalis is used as a heart medication, and it comes from foxglove. Tamiflu, for the flu, comes from star anise. Taxol, a cancer treatment, comes from yew trees. Penicillin comes from a fungus. Aspirin comes from the bark of willow trees. Codeine comes from opium poppy. So if you're of the mindset that something extracted from a natural source is good and better and clean, then all of these medications, they're good and natural too. Another thing I want to sort of share with everyone is the difference between a food herb and a medicinal herb. Now, food herbs are those healthy plant foods that we can find in the supermarket. The biggest difference between a food herb and a medicinal herb is how much you can have. With the food herbs, you can go ahead and eat a good amount of them. In fact, we're always encouraging people to eat more fruits and vegetables. Food herbs aren't there to treat a particular disease or to help relieve symptoms, but it's rather to help nourish the body as a whole and support good health. So it's safe for people to eat a lot of these different food herbs. They're full of nutrients. So even if there are some bad things, just remember what I said previously. It's all about the dosage. Unless you're eating a ridiculous amount of a natural food, you're not going to run into any serious problems. In fact, for most people, the most serious problem they'll run into, for example, if you eat too many apples or you eat too many oranges, the most serious problem you're going to end up with is maybe a little bit of indigestion or an upset stomach. That's it. But you know what? I'm always trying to get people to eat more fruits and vegetables. Most people, they already don't eat enough. So if you are eating fruits and vegetables in the amount that's giving you indigestion, you know what? I'm going to take it as a win. Medicinal herbs are natural, like food herbs, but that doesn't mean that they are 100% safe or that they 100% don't have side effects. With food herbs, you know what you're getting into. An orange is an orange. An apple is an apple. Spinach is spinach. Rice is rice. There's no mystery about it. But with medicinal herbs, they may contain more unknown chemicals. There may be additives or certain methods used to preserve them that aren't really great for our health. Now, as a doctor, people are always distinguishing between Western medicine and traditional medicine. A lot of people believe that instead of taking a Western medicine, like a pharmaceutical drug, they prefer a traditional herb because they think it causes less side effects or is healthier for the body. In fact, all medications will cause side effects, pharmaceutical drugs and medicinal herbs. And some of the side effects of medicinal herbs on the body, they still remain relatively unknown, just because there's not as much research done into the exact mechanism of the herb or how it works. So there's a lot of variance in the herb itself and what it contains, because there's a lot fewer clinical trials. And because it's less refined, there's also a lot of variance on the dosage that you might be getting. So what I'd like to emphasize here is that just the main difference between food herbs and medicinal herbs. Food herbs you can eat a lot of. Medicinal herbs, you want to exercise a little bit more caution and only take it under professional guidance. It's something you take when you're sick, while food herbs are something that you can have all the time when you're well and when you're sick as a way to nourish the body. So when we're looking at man-made drugs or pharmaceutical drugs, they have known properties. For a lot of these drugs, the route of action is known because the companies, the pharmaceutical companies and researchers, they spend a lot of time and money trying to figure that out. The effective dosage is known. The possible side effects have been determined through research and clinical trials. So this is the main difference between pharmaceutical drugs and traditional herbs. But you know what? When it comes down to it, whether it's one or the other, the main thing you really have to do is make sure that you are consulting with your healthcare professional, because both of these things is not something that you want to take willy-nilly. You want to exercise a little bit of caution, and you want to work together with a professional to make sure that you're getting the right dosage, you're getting the right type, and that you're managing any side effects that come along. So another thing we want to know is that we don't want to judge a plant food by certain specific nutrients found in it. So one particular compound within a plant doesn't make it or break it. You have to look at it as a whole. For example, broccoli and other similar vegetables, they contain goitrogens. Some people will avoid broccoli because they fear that these goitrogenic compounds can cause thyroid problems. But there is no scientific research or chemical study that proves eating vegetables and fruits in the usual amounts will cause thyroid issues. Now, a lot of vegetables and fruits will contain goitrogens naturally. These include foods like bok choy, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, Chinese broccoli, collard greens, kale, wasabi, turnip, daikon, sweet potatoes, strawberry, spinach, peanuts, soy, peach, etc. There's so many foods out there, but why does broccoli get the bad rep? So, are you going to avoid all of these foods just because of one thing? right? And plus, there's no special treatment necessary to destroy the goitrogens prior to consumption of these foods. But if it makes you feel a bit better, a large fraction of the goitrogens are destroyed by the cooking process. Plus, again, it's about that dose. Not many people are going to eat broccoli or any of those foods in the sheer amounts necessary to actually be worried about a problem. So just because you have something bad in the food doesn't mean that you have to avoid the entire thing altogether. Because broccoli, all of these other foods as a whole, they're very healthy vegetables. In fact, there's tremendous amounts of evidence that shows that eating a wide variety of fruits and vegetables is really good for your overall health. Now, one of the most recent publications in the International Journal of Epidemiology states that eating 10 portions of fruits and vegetables a day will incur about 24% lower risk of heart disease, a 33% lower risk of stroke, and a 28% lower risk of cardiovascular disease, and a 13% lower risk of cancer. So, you're really looking at the vegetables as a whole. Is it really worth avoiding all of these healthy foods just because of one compound in it? So, you have to look at it as a whole. But conversely, on the other hand, just because you got something good in a food doesn't mean that it's good either. For example, poppy contains vitamin C, but just because it contains a vitamin, it doesn't mean that it's suddenly a health food and we should be eating more poppy. So, some more examples of this is like tobacco plant. Tobacco contains a type of protein called fraction 1 protein that is odorless, colorless, non-allergenic, and it has cholesterol lowering amino acid composition. But that doesn't suddenly mean that tobacco is something healthy for you. It doesn't suddenly negate all of the negative effects of tobacco. So we get a lot of people asking us things like, oh, this plant food contains this specific nutrient. Does this mean that we can't have it anymore? Does this mean that I should not be eating this plant food? No, it doesn't. It's not really fair to discount an otherwise healthy food based just on one thing. And if you're going to discount a lot of foods based on just one thing, then when it comes down to it, there's really not a lot of things that we can eat at all. For example, you just take our technology now, our modern technology. We are so good at detecting any sort of contaminant. For example, now we can detect heavy metal content in the nanogram amounts, which are tiny, tiny, tiny amounts. All right, so soil contains heavy metals just naturally. That's just a natural property of soil. So anything that is grown in soil will have heavy metals, but in tiny nanogram amounts. So in the past, we would have been able to say, you know what, this vegetable has no heavy metals just because we weren't able to find them. But now our technology has improved and we are able to find heavy metals in these minuscule amounts. But does that mean that this vegetable or this plant food was somehow healthier in the past than it is now? No, it's not. It's just, well, in the past, we weren't able to find it because we didn't have the technology. And now we do have the technology to find it. So we know it's there. But that doesn't mean that it's suddenly less healthy. It's all about looking at the plant as a whole and not just hyper focusing on one particular aspect of it. So the panacea is in the supermarket, in the vegetable and fruit aisle. So when it comes to nourishing the body, we don't want to focus on just one nutrient, but all the other sorts of nutrients that exist in plant foods, because all of these nutrients, when it's inside of a wholesome plant, it exists in synergy. When we nourish our body, we want to prevent illness. When we're sick, we need to nourish our body still because we want to work on repairing and defending our body against disease. But when we're well, we still need to nourish our body because we want to build a strong foundation so that if something does happen, we have a really good starting point for repairing and recovering. But for you to have a strong foundation, it's something that needs to be done on a daily basis, not just when we're sick. So a lot of people, they do this thing where when they're healthy, when they're young, they're a little bit more lax about their diet. They eat a lot of fast food, they eat a lot of sweets, a lot of chocolate because they think, oh, I'm healthy, I can take it. And then it's only when they start, noticing a decline in their health, or they come down with something, or they get ill, that's when they start eating healthy. But at that point, it's a little bit too little too late, so it's something that has to be an ongoing process, sort of like exercise. You don't run a marathon and start training when you're running the marathon or like the day before the marathon, right? You have to start months beforehand. You have to start building that basis so your body can take it. It's the same thing with our health. So when it comes to all of these healthy foods, it's something that you have to do a lot over time. It's something that you have to slowly nourish and build up over time. And one of the best ways to do this is just by eating a lot of plant foods. Plant foods contain all of the nutrients your body needs, and it has phytochemicals. Now, phytochemicals or phytonutrients are different from vitamins. Each phytochemical it can help stop the process of really scary diseases like cancers in very specific ways. For example, during breakfast, a lot of people like eating smoked meats like bacon, but there's a chance that these smoked meats will contain something called nitrosamine. But if you eat something like p-coumaric acid in tomatoes, it can help neutralize the effects of this nitrosamine. So phytochemicals are really different, So when you're looking at all of these phytochemicals, what phytochemicals do inside plants is that they help defend the plant against different stresses. For example, a particular plant that's very high in phytochemicals is the cactus. But just think about it. How does the cactus grow? The cactus grows in really harsh environments that's always underneath the sun. So the cactus has a really high level of phytochemicals to help defend it against all of these stresses, like all of these stresses from UV radiation, etc. So, when it comes to all of these phytochemicals, we want to eat a lot of different plants. We don't want to have just cactus, but we want to have a different variety. Because like I mentioned before, each phytochemical can help you out in each way. For example, if you like eating a lot of smoked meats, you know what? Okay, I'm not asking you to give up on eating ham and bacon or other smoked meats entirely. All I'm asking is that you might want to eat something else with it, like strawberries or tomatoes that have phytochemicals that help counteract the effects of nitrosamine. If you really love your fried chicken or meat, it can have a lot of estrogen or hormones in it, which can have negative effects on our body. But, again, you don't have to give it up entirely, though it is the healthier choice. But I get it, we're human. We like our delicious food. So if you must have your fried chicken, then maybe eat a little bit more of foods like cauliflower, because cauliflower has phytochemicals called indole-3-carbinol. It can help prevent estrogen from attaching to estrogen receptors, thereby helping prevent these hormone-related diseases. So if you eat broccoli, there's some sulforaphane, which can help kick out cancer-causing agents away from cells. There is genistein inside soy, which can help stop nutrients from getting to cancer cells. Lycopene and nomalin in citrus fruits and tomatoes, they can help prevent the metastasis or spread of cancer. So, each of these different foods, they contain different phytochemicals. So it's so important to have a wide variety of them. You don't just want to have, just one type of phytochemical. I know there's a lot of, market supplements out there that say, oh, we have this isolated nutrient from a plant that is supposed to be good for you. But, there's not much point taking one thing, because just think about it. If there's 1,000 things you're trying to prevent and each phytochemical can help you prevent one thing, and you take just one phytochemical, then there's 999 other methods that you still need to work towards. So you want to have a wide variety of these phytochemicals. Plus, there's still so many that scientists still don't know about, and you still want those as well. And all of these phytochemicals, we can only tell you about the ones that we know of. But there's all sorts of nutrients inside these wholesome plant foods, but we still don't know about yet. So we still want to have the entire plant food. We don't want to rely on things that have been extracted from it. Another thing that we want to look out for in plant foods is something called phytohormones. So a lot of people will say that, one food that they want to avoid in particular is soy, because they say, oh, soy has phytohormones like phytoestrogens, which can cause cancer. But that's not true. Soy doesn't cause cancer, and all sorts of plants contain plant hormones. That's just how plants are. But why does soy get the bad rep? It's a little bit unfair to the poor soybean. So soy has a lot of benefits out there, and many of these benefits are actually due to the phytohormones or phytoestrogens contained within soy. Now, phytoestrogens are associated with multiple protective effects against cancer, heart disease, and bone weakness. However, there's a lot of critics out there, and they'll say that, oh, soy is not good for you because the phytoestrogens is too close to the female hormone estrogen, and therefore it's going to cause all sorts of negative effects like disrupting your hormones, increasing the chances of breast cancer, affecting the development of children, impaired fertility, or all sorts of things. But really, I think it's just coming down to the name. So you see the name phytoestrogens, you see the word estrogen, and you get sort of worried about it, because none of those things are true. It doesn't cause cancer. It doesn't affect your hormone pathways. It doesn't affect the development of children. It doesn't impair your fertility. It doesn't have any of these supposed negative effects that a lot of critics will say that it has. In fact, it's even okay for men to consume soy as well, because phytoestrogen is not estrogen, okay? It's a plant hormone, and you are not a plant, so it's not going to affect you the same way as human estrogen would, because they're two entirely separate things. All right, so in fact, men who consume soy, they actually have a less incidence of prostate cancer. In epidemiological studies, it's been shown that Asian women who, we typically contain a diet higher in soy, we have a threefold lower risk of breast cancer compared to the Western population. So what it comes down to, it's not just cancer. It helps protect against bone loss and bone weakness. In fact, postmenopausal women who consume high amounts of soy have better bone density than those who have a lower soy intake. So adding soy to an otherwise healthy diet may prevent bone loss later on in life. And soy is also really, really protective against heart disease. In fact, the evidence is so strong that the FDA has allowed a health claim stating that 25 grams of soy protein a day as part of a diet low in saturated fat and cholesterol may reduce the risk of heart disease. All right, so however, all of these protective effects in soy, they're only present in wholesome soy. Once you have started extracting things from it, once you've started extracting all of these supposedly helpful things from the soy, you no longer get the same effect anymore. So in order for you to have all of these benefits you get from the plant foods, the best way to do it is to have the wholesome food. Another nutrient that we really want to look out for in plants is something called antioxidants. Antioxidants help destroy free radicals. Now, free radicals are byproducts of the body's metabolic process. You can think of it as a little bit like car exhaust. So when your car is running, it burns fuel, which is what it needs to run properly. But it also produces exhaust, which is the leftover or byproduct that's not needed and harmful. Antioxidants help get rid of all of this. Too many free radicals in the body, which is like your body's exhaust, can lead to disease and faster aging. So antioxidants, in a way, they can help us retain our youth. For example, some people may be 50 years old, but their immune system is 60 years old, while other people may be 50 years old, but their immune system is 40 years old. And what's the difference there? They eat a healthier diet full of more plant foods because they're taking in all of these other nutrients, all of these antioxidants as well. They help our body they help our body maintain its peak performance. And vegetables and fruits, they have plenty of antioxidants. So, how about we change our meals around? A lot of people, they will eat their meals first and then they eat their fruits last. But why don't you eat your fruits first? This time, you're taking in all of the antioxidants the very first thing. And remember, as soon as you start peeling or cutting a fruit, you're losing your antioxidants because they're interacting with the oxygen in the air. So the best thing to do is to peel and cut your fruits as soon as, just before you're ready to eat them to help prevent this loss of antioxidants. Another thing that we want to look out for is polysaccharides. Now, one fruit that has plenty of polysaccharides are mushrooms. Polysaccharides can help out the immune system. It can help the immune cells work a little bit faster and regenerate a little bit faster. The more variety of mushrooms you get, the more variety of polysaccharides you're getting, because again, each of them, they work in their own little way. So our immune system is a little bit like an army. You have your Air Force, the Navy, you have your foot soldiers, but you need everyone all working together in order to have a strong army. So if you're only nourishing your Navy and you have a really strong Navy, but you have a really weak Air Force, or you have really weak Marines, or every other part of your army, then overall that's not going to be a strong army and you're going to lose the war, because you need an overall strong army. So that's why you want a variety, so you can nourish all of these different parts of your immune system, because they all need to work together in order to have a strong immune system. So again, all of these different nutrients, you can just get it from the supermarket. It's really easy to walk into the supermarket and get a lot of mushrooms. There's all sorts of different mushrooms in the supermarket. So go ahead, just go out there and get a wide variety, because again, a wide variety will help us fight disease in a wide variety of ways. Now, wholesomeness is the cornerstone of what makes a food a food. Once the wholesome food has been processed, once different nutrients have been extracted from the foods and purified, they have side effects. It's more of a drug than a food. However, if we're trying to cook or filter or dry or powdering food, it's not going to turn a food into a chemical. You're just changing the form of the food. Wholesomeness is more effective than any isolated nutrient. So all of these balanced nutrients inside of a wholesome food, they're intelligent. They're working together. They're working together in synergy. They are in a balanced way. So all you gotta do is you gotta eat more of these fruits and vegetables. And variety is key to getting enough nutrients. So scientists think that there is about 50,000 or more of these different nutrients out there, but we still don't know about all of them. We only understand about 150. So it's an exciting new area of research. Scientists, we still don't know all of these different nutrients out there. So rather than thinking, oh, we know better, we only want one thing in a food. You want to have the wholesome food instead. Another thing we want to know about is that harvest time determines the nutritional content. So, let's take something easy as an example. Apples on the shelves in the supermarkets. So apples on the shelves in the supermarket, they look fresh. They look like they were just arrived and they have been, just plucked from the tree. But in fact, apples can be stored for a year or more before they end up on the supermarket shelf. Oranges for 3 months, persimmons for 3 to 6 months. That's because they are plucked and then stored in cool conditions. And oftentimes chemicals are used to slow down the ripening process. That's why it's so easy for you to get apples year-round. So just because something looks fresh doesn't mean that it is actually fresh. All right, so if you're storing it for such a long period of time, you have to remember, as soon as a plant is harvested or as soon as a fruit is separated from the tree or bush or the mother plant, it starts losing nutrients from that point onwards. So the most nutritious plant is when it's harvested as soon as it's ripe and then it's eaten like pretty much immediately afterwards. That is when it has the highest amount of nutrients. So, you have to keep that in mind. Looks are deceiving. Another thing people have it out for are frozen foods. People think that frozen food isn't very good, when in fact, it's not so much the freezing process that's harmful. You have to look at the harvest time. If it's frozen quite soon after harvesting, then it can actually have more nutrients than that fresh looking fruit on the shelf at the moment. So it's just because it's freezing. The freezing locks the nutrients in. But it's just because that freezing process also messes with the texture of the plant food a little bit. So it might not taste as nice, but the nutrients are there. So the longer time it spends, just sitting out there in the air, just sitting out there on the shelf, the more nutrients it's going to lose. So another thing that people also have it out for are canned foods. People think that, canned foods are not as nutritious or dried foods are not as nutritious or something like that. But again, it's all about that harvest time. If it's canned super soon after harvesting, then it's locking that nutritional content inside. But again, it's also one of those things you got to look at as a whole. If you're looking at a canned food and it's canned in sugar syrup, then it's maybe not the healthiest choice out there. Or you have another canned food and it's canned with a huge amount of salt in it. Again, it's not necessarily the healthiest choice. So, there's a lot of things that can help food stay nutritious for longer, and one of them is drying it. Dry foods will last longer than wet foods. You need water for something to spoil, and that's why dry foods tend to stay good for much, much longer, because the bacteria that makes foods go bad, they need that water to replicate. No water means no bacteria. So another thing we want to remember is that even if it's a liquid food, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not as good as anything else. When it's a liquid food, you want to remember that you want to keep it away from oxygen. When you slice open an apple and over time it turns brown, that's that reaction with the oxygen in the air. And that browning process is the oxidation. And when it oxidates, it starts losing nutrients. So you want to look at the packaging of a liquid product. You want to make sure that it's not packaged with any oxygen in the packaging. A lot of the times when you're looking at these packaging processes, what people will do is that instead of just pumping in oxygen or just room air inside, they will pump in a different gas instead, like nitrogen, which will not cause this oxidization process. So if it's packed with nitrogen and you just got to make sure it doesn't have any oxygen in it, then you're good. So it's all about the harvest time and not just how fresh it looks. And when it comes to nutritional immunology, you have to remember we cannot control new viruses from emerging. We can't prevent carcinogenic compounds in the air, but we can control what we eat. And that is what nutritional immunology is all about. It's about teaching us the importance of the immune system, and it's a guideline on how to nourish our body as a whole, how to achieve and then maintain health. Nutritional immunology is a type of science that doesn't have a lot of limelight because preventing disease or stopping people from getting sick isn't as glamorous as sweeping in and curing diseases, but in many cases, it's far more important and more effective. For example, we're always grateful to the doctor for fixing us or for curing our diseases or making our symptoms go away. But if our doctor told us to stop eating unhealthy foods, exercise more, it's a little bit like background noise. You know all this already, but you don't do it. So why don't you do it? It's far better to prevent a disease from occurring than to wait until you have a disease and then try to fix it after the fact. All right, fixing it after the fact is really, really difficult. It requires the doctor, it requires all sorts of medication, all sorts of extra effort. But when it comes to preventing disease, that is something that is within our own power. It is something that everyday person can do. And it is also something that everyday person can help other people with. While a doctor would need, a lot of years of specialized education, what the everyday person can do is share knowledge on how to stay healthy and how to eat right. And it's something the everyday person can do to have a really meaningful and impactful impact and all of the people around you. It's one of the best gifts that you can give someone, the knowledge of health, to help other people prevent diseases from occurring to begin with. So to help everyone out with that, I want to tackle some myths. All right, here I'd like to show some examples of how not everything natural is without side effects. It doesn't mean that all of these herbs or foods shouldn't be taken or that, they're evil, bad things. It only means that these herbs are not food herbs and it shouldn't be eaten willy-nilly like a food herb can be. It just means that more research is necessary. And even though some research shows these side effects, we still need a lot more research to be conducted. And there still may be uses for these medicinal herbs or foods or drugs, but we just want to keep in mind that, we do want to be knowledgeable about what we are putting into our body and what sort of effect it can have on our body. So noni, it has a lot of uses or supposed uses out there, like cold, flu, to treat diabetes, anxiety, and high blood pressure. A lot of people will drink the juice, eat the fruits, or even have it in a powdered form, but there's no evidence to support any claims of therapeutic benefits, and it's got side effects. The U.S. National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health has advised against consumption of noni products if you have a history of liver disease or disorders. Now, research has pointed to anthraquinones in noni as potentially toxic to the liver and other organs, so it is something that we do want to exercise a little bit of caution about. Next up is gold thread. It has a lot of uses, such as treating infections, diarrhea, jaundice, fever, or even being good for diabetes. However, it is unsafe for pregnant or breastfeeding mothers and contains beriberi and can actually increase bilirubin in the newborns. So instead of helping jaundice, it can actually cause jaundice. It can cause brain damage in newborns and developing fetuses. So if you're pregnant, you really shouldn't be taking it. If it's taken within the first 3 months of pregnancy, when a lot of development is going on, then it can increase the risk of birth defects and can affect the central nervous system. Next up is Chinese knotweed. It has a lot of purported uses like hair loss and graying, constipation, headaches, and skin problems. But its side effects include hepatotoxicity, which is liver toxicity. It can cause acute liver damage, and even deaths have been reported in many countries. It's unsafe for pregnant women because it has estrogen-like effects which can affect the developing baby. Caution should be taken to people with a history of estrogen-related cancers, such as breast, ovarian, uterine, or even prostate cancers. Next up is coltsfoot. So it has a lot of, supposed uses, such as respiratory conditions, treating respiratory conditions like the flu, cold, fever, or gout. But side effects, it can contain tumorigenic compounds that can cause liver damage and cancer. The German government has actually banned the sale of this herb because many health authorities around the world discourage its use. It's found in some traditional medicine cough syrups or mixed with loquat syrup for the throat. So please read the ingredient labels before taking cough or throat syrup. Another one is bracken. So a lot of people will actually eat bracken fern because I don't blame them. It's a tasty plant, but it's also been used to treat headaches, weakness, and rheumatism. But it contains carcinogenic compounds which can increase cancers of the digestive tract. And if you have contaminated milk, it can actually increase gastric cancer. So, with the bracken, the thing is not just humans have to avoid eating it, but our livestock have to avoid eating it as well. Now, it's been shown to these carcinogenic compounds have been shown to leak from bracken plants into the water supply. So if you have livestock and they're drinking contaminated water, what happens then is that they take in all of these toxic compounds, and then the animal products will be contaminated. Or if they eat bracken fern directly, like cows, they like to graze, and they eat bracken fern, then their milk can be contaminated. And if we humans eat these contaminated animal products, then it's still hazardous to our health. So it is something that we want to not only avoid eating, but we want our livestock to avoid eating as well. Now, this carcinogenic compound, it may be destroyed by heat, But the British Royal Horticultural Society still recommends that humans and livestock should just avoid consuming bracken. High cancer rates have been found in places where bracken's consumption is high. Next up is sweet leaf. It has been used as a vegetable or as a weight loss technique. However, it can contain high concentrations of an alkaloid, papaverine. It can cause bronchiolitis obliterans, which can lead to respiratory failure. Now, the only treatment for this is lung transplantation. That is the only treatment. All right, so if you get this condition, it's a pretty serious condition that requires a lot to fix. There have been 278 cases of lung failure resulting from ingestion of this plant reported in Taiwan. So it is something that we want to be careful about. Panax nodo ginseng, not the same as ginseng, has been used for lowering blood pressure, slowing down bleeding, pain relief, or reducing swelling. However, it is likely unsafe for pregnant or breastfeeding women. One of the chemicals in it has caused birth defects in animals, and it may act like estrogen. So please don't use it if you have hormone-sensitive conditions, such as breast, uterine, ovarian cancers, or endometriosis and uterine fibroids. Aloe vera. Now, a lot of people might be surprised to see aloe vera here because it's super popular. However, we're not talking about using aloe vera as a cream or on your skin topically. We're talking here about eating it. A lot of people will eat aloe vera for constipation or for lowering their blood sugar. And you know what? It does actually work for constipation because it's got something called aloin. But that compound in it that lets it treat constipation also has potential toxicity. It can induce abdominal pain, diarrhea, or hepatitis. So it is one of those things that we want to be careful about eating. If you eat too much of it for too long, it can cause hematuria or blood in the urine, weight loss, and heart and kidney disease. The California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment has stated that aloe vera and golden seal are chemicals known to the state of California to cause cancer or reproductive toxicity. Golden seal or orange root has been used to treat colds, respiratory tract infections, hay fever, and digestive problems. Now, it's got side effects such as hypotension, which is low blood pressure, heart damage, digestive problems, depression, and rapid heartbeats and seizures. If you have a particularly high dose, you can have breathing problems, paralysis, and death. Long-term use can lead to vitamin B deficiency, which can lead to neurological problems like persistent tingling, problems with balance, mental confusion, brain fog, etc. It can also cause hallucinations and delirium. Now, newborns are particularly sensitive because they're still so small and everything is still developing. So if you damage a little bit of the development, it has all sorts of magnified effects later on in life. So it can cause brain damage. So please don't take this during pregnancy or if you are breastfeeding. The next plant is Aristolochia fangqi. It has been used for seizures, arthritis, and cough, or as a booster for the immune system. However, it is a potent carcinogen and kidney toxin, and it can cause kidney cancer and kidney failure. So when it comes to all of these different herbs, we do want to be more careful about what we're putting into our body. And that just doesn't apply only to herbs, but to everything that we are eating. So nutritional immunology is not about the things that people, can't understand. It's about an overall healthy lifestyle. We want people to be able to obtain this healthy lifestyle, not by fixing problems after they have occurred, but by helping you prevent these problems to begin with. And instead of, requiring you to go to a doctor or to wait for, the supposed fountain of youth to be discovered, what we are saying here is that we want to put the power into your hands. There's a lot of things that the everyday person can do to safeguard their health, to nourish their body, to nourish their immune system. And it is something that every single person out there can do. And it's not something that you have to, go on a quest for or to, try really hard to find. The miracle cure is just in the supermarket. You don't have to wait for some magic cure to be developed. Everything that you need to safeguard your health, everything that you need to build a strong body, is all there in the supermarket. We are blessed to be living in an area or in a time period like this, where if we want healthy food, we can just walk into the supermarket and get it. Just walk in, instead of going for all of those unhealthy foods, the snacks, the sweets, the cookies. Just spend a little bit more time in the fruits and vegetables aisle. You want to pick up those are the best. All of these wholesome fruits and vegetables, it's got all sorts of nutrients in it. You can't replicate it in a lab. You can't beat it with medicine. This is the best. And all you have to do is that the next time you're there, you just pick up a wide variety. You want to be able to look down in your shopping cart and see a rainbow of colors out there. So that's what you really need to do. Just go out there and eat a rainbow of fruits and vegetables. And along with diet, you want to have a good exercise as well. So really, all of this is just about changing your mindset. The only thing you really need to do is have this mentality that being healthy is in your control. Every one of us, we have that responsibility to educate ourselves, to be knowledgeable about what we are putting into our body, and to pick our wholesome, nutritious foods to maintain our health.
Now we will be answering some questions from the audience. Please state your question in the live chat section. Kindly avoid asking questions about personal illnesses and ask each question only once. Thank you. For our first audience question, Dr. Yi, some countries are encouraging a second booster dose for the elderly. Is it necessary? If we have COVID-19 before, do we need a second booster dose? If yes, what should be the gap between the first and second booster doses? Is it advisable to take the fourth dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, or will 3 doses suffice?
So when it comes to a second booster shot, which is again the fourth dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, it really depends on your country guidelines. Some countries like Singapore, they don't recommend a second booster dose, whereas other countries may recommend it. But in the end, it really comes down to you. What most of the research shows so far is that the 3 doses should be enough to protect us against COVID. While some people may opt for a 4th dose, that a level of extra protection that it offers is not a lot, and it doesn't last for very long. So it's because of this that a lot of health authorities out there are not recommending that the general population get a 4th booster dose. However, you still want to look at your country's guidelines and to please follow the guidelines of where you are living at the moment. If you are super worried about getting COVID, you can still opt for the 4th booster dose. It does offer a little bit more extra protection, but for people who have had their full 3 doses and they're otherwise healthy, they're not immunocompromised, they're not elderly, then you don't have to go for a 4th dose. So, when it comes to the second booster vaccine, what the general recommendation is that it should be administered about 5 months after receiving the first booster. All right, so if you've already had COVID-19, that's a little bit like, you have COVID and that offers your immune system a little bit more of a boost as well. But for the first booster shot, that's still recommended. For the second booster shot, it's the same as with anyone else. You're still in the same pool as everyone else. So please follow your country guidelines. If you're in Singapore, they don't recommend the second booster dose for now, but if you want it, you can still go out there and get it.
Dr. Yi, what is the difference between polysaccharides from animal-based foods and polysaccharides from plant-based foods? Do both sources give the same benefits to our body?
So when you're looking at polysaccharides from animal foods and polysaccharides from plant foods, you have to remember is that polysaccharide is a very broad term. Okay, it's not that polysaccharides in animal foods are the same as the polysaccharides in plant foods. And it's not to say that polysaccharides in one animal food is the same as polysaccharides in a different animal food, or polysaccharides from one plant food is the same as polysaccharides from another plant food. That's why it's so important to get a variety of different foods out there, variety of all sorts of nutrients out there. All right, so when we're looking at a food, we want to look at the food as a whole. All right, so when you're taking in the food, you want to think to yourself, what does this food bring me? What sort of nutrients are contained within this food? And what sort of other things are also inside of this food? And what can they do to help my health? Or on the other hand, what can they do that might harm my health instead? So this isn't to say that, all sorts of foods out there, they have all sorts of nutrients. Different foods have different nutrients. Okay, so even when you're looking between different plant foods, you get different nutrients out there. You get different polysaccharides out there. So you want to have a wide variety of them. But when it comes to plant foods and animal foods, what you want to keep in mind is that, for animal foods, there's no doubt there are nutrients in there. And a lot of animal foods, they do have a lot of healthy nutrients in it. But then think to yourself, what else does the animal food contain? Does it have a lot of saturated fat? Does it have a lot of cholesterol? How am I going to cook it? Am I going to deep fry it? Am I going to add a lot of oil to fry it up? How am I going to cook it? And you have to look at your general health concerns too. How are you generally? Are you getting enough nutrients from other sources? Do you have any health problems like heart disease or diabetes or kidney disease? All sorts of considerations have to come into play. For example, if you have a history of heart disease or strokes in the family or in you yourself, then maybe you want to avoid foods that have a lot of cholesterol or have a lot of saturated fats. Or if you have kidney disease, and one of the things that a lot of kidney disease patients need to avoid is protein. But that doesn't mean that animal and plant protein are the same. What people with kidney disease want to avoid is animal protein, because research has showed that plant protein, for example, protein from soy, doesn't actually harm the kidneys. So you can still get protein from different sources. So you want to think to yourself, what is this balance that I'm going for? Is the nutrients in this animal food that I want to eat, is it worth the saturated fat or the cholesterol or the other unhealthy things that might be in there? Can I get the same nutritional benefits by eating a plant food instead? Because plant foods, they don't have these saturated fats. They don't have any cholesterols in them. So it's that balance of what you're looking out for. So, yes, they are different, but that doesn't mean that they are equal or that, it's all good. It's like what I mentioned before. You want to look at the food as a whole. You don't want to just hyper-focus on one thing in there. So having a healthy diet, it's really easy to say here, oh, you just got to eat healthy. But it actually requires a lot of thought, a lot of care to be put into your diet. Because one of the things we want to look out for when it comes to your diet is not just, oh, I'm going to force myself to eat all of these foods. Because if you don't put that care and effort needed into planning your diet, you're not going to stick with it. Okay, let's be real here. If you went from a carnivore-like diet to a suddenly cold turkey vegetarian diet, let's be real here, a lot of people would not be able to stick with it. And that's being human. It's hard. It's hard eating healthy because a lot of these healthy foods, they're just not as good as eating cakes or chocolates or fried chicken, but it's better for us overall. So what we really need to do is not just hyper-focus on one particular nutrient in the food, but to plan it out. If you really cannot give up your meat, then okay, that's fine. You want to look at it as a whole, can I switch out this meat for a healthier version of it, like a more lean version? Instead of frying my meat, can I maybe steam it instead, or have a different cooking method that is healthier? Baking it even is healthy. It's making these little changes over time, changes that you can stick with when it comes to your diet, because that's the important thing. So you want to eat healthy and you want to also stick with it. All right, so you want to look at all of the foods as a whole, and as a whole, how they fit into your diet and your lifestyle.
Dr. E, why do doctors recommend that patients on cardiac medication control their vegetable intake, especially in terms of vitamin K?
So when it comes to these cardiac medications, one of the common ones, or the one I can think of is that why it's very finicky, is something called warfarin. Now, that's probably the drug you're thinking of. Warfarin is an anticoagulant, meaning that it stops your blood from clotting, which is important for people with a lot of heart conditions because they can't afford their blood to be clotting and blocking off access inside their vessels. So they might be on warfarin to stop this clotting. However, warfarin is one of those drugs that is really incredibly finicky. All right, it's one of those fickle drugs that likes to change its mind on what it likes and how it likes to work in your body. So you know how a lot of drugs they have a set dose. You know, if you are an adult, you can have this dose of a drug and it will reliably cause this effect. That's not the case for warfarin, right? Warfarin is a pain. When you get on warfarin, what has to happen is that you have to go in for a lot of monitoring. They will monitor how the warfarin affects your blood clotting and adjust dosage to use specifically over time. All right, so because warfarin is so individualized, it should be adjusted to you. It's not you adjusting yourself to the drug. It is the drug being adjusted to you. All right, that is the way it should be working. So instead of doctors telling you, oh, you should stop eating healthy foods like vegetables, if they're worried about warfarin being affected by the vitamin K content in what you are eating, what they should be doing instead is adjusting the warfarin to you and allow you to have a healthy diet full of vegetables, because that is probably part of the contribution to the heart disease to begin with, because a lot of people, they don't eat healthy. They eat very unhealthy, so they end up with heart disease. So really, as doctors, we should be encouraging people to eat more vegetables, more plant foods. Please, if you're eating more plant foods, that is something that needs to be encouraged, not something that needs to be discouraged. Okay, and what they're worried about is vitamin K in particular in foods, because the antidote for warfarin, for example, if you need emergency surgery and they need you to not bleed out when they cut into you, they will give you vitamin K because it reverses the effects of warfarin. So a lot of plant foods will contain vitamin K, and they are worried that it might affect this warfarin dosage. So, but the thing is that with the amount in plant foods, you have to have quite a high dose of vitamin K to completely reverse the effects of warfarin. And it is pretty difficult to eat that much vegetable food to be able to reverse your effects of warfarin. Okay, so if you are on a healthy diet, what should be happening instead is that you can just communicate with your doctor. You could just tell your doctor, oh, I'm having this and this sort of diet, and you're working towards a healthy diet. So instead of the doctor saying, oh, no, you should stop eating your healthy diet, you are the one who needs to change yourself to fit a drug. The drug should be adjusted to you and your lifestyle, right? So the dosage of the cardiac medication should be adjusted to you and not the other way around. So stand strong, don't give into this, and you want to be your own advocate for your health as well. Don't you let your doctor go around and saying, oh, you need to eat less vegetables, because you know that's not right. Okay, we know this already. So don't be afraid to speak up and go, you know what, I'm going to continue to eat my vegetables. I'm going to continue to work towards my healthy diet. And you are the one who needs to help me manage my heart medication drugs so that it fits into my healthy lifestyle. All right, that is what we should be doing.
Dr. E, recently there have been a growing number of mysterious hepatitis cases in children across many countries. How did the children get this? As parents, what can we do to protect our children?
All right, so there's been a lot of cases in the news recently about these, mysterious hepatitis cases, especially in young children, or of these hepatitis of unknown cause. So a lot of people, it gets a lot of parents worried because a lot of these cases have been quite severe and some deaths have resulted in it. So it's a new situation that's still under investigation. But what we know so far is that there does not seem to be a link between these cases of hepatitis and COVID. I know that's the first thing a lot of people will think of. Does this have an effect on COVID? Is it because of COVID that a lot of kids are ending up with hepatitis? That's not the case, okay? There's no link with COVID so far. In their investigations so far, the CDC in America has found that among those cases that have hepatitis of unknown cause, they were actually negative for hepatitis A, B, and C, but quite a few of them were positive for adenovirus, which is a really common virus that causes cold-like illnesses or stomach problems. So other than that, there was no other known common contact or exposure between these children. So although the children were very, very, very sick, it is still a very, very, very rare thing. So it's not a cause of concern for the general population. So, and it's also something to remember as well. In the past, the doctors may have overlooked the adenovirus-related hepatitis in otherwise healthy kids, because in most cases, adenovirus doesn't cause hepatitis of this severity. And a lot of the times, hepatitis is something that will resolve on its own. So a lot of doctors, they don't routinely test for anything beyond looking for the usual suspects like hepatitis A, B, and C. So it could be that, there's been a lot of cases out there and you just miss them because we only see the severe cases. We only see the scary ones. So that's a little bit of bias that we have to account for as well. So what is the adenovirus? The adenovirus is like a cold. It's spread through droplets from the nose and throat of an infected person. So like coughing or sneezing, or by touching hands, an object or surface of something that's contaminated, and then touching your face, your eyes, your nose, your mouth. So the important thing for parents to do is to just try to avoid getting adenovirus. And the best way to avoid getting this virus is the same things that we have been doing so far. Things like practicing good hand hygiene, practicing good food hygiene. So you want to, wash your hands before you eat anything. You want to make sure that the food you're eating is clean as well. If someone is coughing or sneezing, you want to wear a mask to protect the people around you. You want to social distance. It's all the things that we already are doing at the moment. All right. And another thing that you can look out for are the signs of jaundice or liver dysfunction. Now, the signs of jaundice are things like a yellow tinting of the skin. All right, the whites of the eyes can look a little bit yellow as well. But as always, the best defense is your immune system. So most infections with adenovirus, they're super mild. People just get over them without any treatment. It's just like the cold. You get over it. You don't need anything special. So it's super important to take care of our body, to take care of our immune system so that we have that strong foundation to get over this illness if we do get it.
Dr. E, will eating more vegetables lower the level of progesterone in our body? Will consuming progesterone-rich plant foods regulate progesterone receptor rate? May I know what causes PR to increase? If this PR increases, does that expedite cancer to grow?
Okay, so when it comes to plant hormones, a lot of plant hormones may have similar structures to human hormones. For example, the one thing people always worry about is phytoestrogen, but there's a lot of other plant hormones out there that may be similar to our human hormones, but they are not the same, and they do not have the same effects on our body as our human hormones, okay? We are not plants. The plant hormones affect plants in certain ways, okay? What we have to worry about more is animal hormones, because animal hormones are a lot closer to us, and a lot of animal hormones can actually have a negative effect on our body. So when it comes to these plant hormones, we want, you don't have to worry about that so much. It's not going to have the same effect as human hormones. And when it comes to levels of our hormones in our body itself, our body is really, really, really good at controlling the levels. Okay. So, the levels may change over time. If you are a woman, then the levels of estrogen and progesterone, they have a cycle and they go up and down. They change over time, and that is natural. Okay, so sometimes you might have low levels of progesterone. Sometimes you might have higher levels of progesterone, but that's all natural, and your body knows what it's doing. Okay, it is controlling these levels and it knows what it's doing. So what you have to do instead is just nourish the body. You want to give the body the nutrients it needs to continue maintaining this balance. Because maintaining balance is something that the body has to do, but it is also something that your body has to expend effort on. Your body has to expend effort on monitoring the levels of these hormones. It has to expend effort on synthesizing the hormones that you need. It has to expend effort on making sure that all the other things in your body are also running all okay. And all of this effort that your body is going through, it needs nutrients to do it. Okay, so you have to keep feeding your body healthy fuel so that your body is able to keep doing what it does and maintain this balance that you have naturally. When it comes to hormone-related cancers, what you have to look out for is a lot of it is like, for example, if you have a cancer that has estrogen receptors on it, what is going to be bad for that is that if you have suddenly very high levels of estrogen in your body, and that can occur, sometimes tumors themselves will pump out hormones because it's good for the tumor itself. Sometimes that might be due to your diet. You might have exogenous hormones or hormones coming from outside of your body, from your diet or other sources. So again, it's all about keeping that balance. If you have that balance of hormones in your body, you don't have to worry too much. And when it comes to hormones like estrogen, progesterone, you're going to have fluctuations, okay? And those fluctuations are all okay.
Dr. Yi, more people are having dementia or Alzheimer's disease nowadays. Is there a way to prevent it or slow down its progress?
Okay. So when it comes to dementia or Alzheimer's disease, they're actually two separate diseases. A lot of people will think they're one and the same, but they're actually two separate diseases. Now, dementia is a very general term. It is referring to that loss of cognitive function that a lot of people might see as they get older into their years, while Alzheimer's disease can cause dementia. All right, so you get Alzheimer's dementia, and you can get other forms of dementia. So Alzheimer's disease is a disease in which you get certain plaques forming in your brain. All right, so with Alzheimer's disease, you can get a form of dementia. So they're not entirely the same thing. When it comes to these diseases, especially when it comes to diseases with our brain function, those are super scary because people think, oh, what makes me me? It's my manners and my personality and my memories. So when it comes to dementia and those diseases, it's extra scary because you feel like, oh, my memories are being taken away. I'm no longer who I am anymore. So a lot of people, they really want to preserve their brain function. They want to avoid getting dementia because they want to be able to stay themselves for longer. They want to be able to enjoy their life longer. They don't want to be a burden to the people around them. So one of the best ways to avoid dementia is actually just to use your brain. Your brain is a muscle, all right? Just like if you don't work out, you're going to lose muscle mass. All right, it's the same thing with your brain. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. All right, so when it comes to dementia, or when it comes to dementia, you really need to you gotta use your brain. You gotta use your brain more. All right, so there was quite a famous study done quite a while ago, and they did it on nuns because, well, nuns there, they live in a certain environment. They all eat the same thing. So a lot of different variables. It's very controlled. And they looked at the rates of dementia in these nuns, and they found that the nuns that had a job like teaching children or things that were more intensive on the brain, they actually had lower rates of dementia than the nuns who had the jobs that didn't quite use their brains as much. So it's all about keeping that brain active. There was another quite an interesting study using the brains of looking into the brains of musicians, and they found that after death and during autopsy, they looked into the brains of these musicians, and they found that, you know what, a lot of these musicians actually had signs of quite advanced brain disease like Alzheimer's disease. But when they were living, they didn't display any signs or symptoms of the disease. And a lot of these scientists, they figured it was because, well, playing an instrument is very mentally taxing. It's very intensive on your brain. And that is probably what helps stave off all of these signs and symptoms. Because your brain, if it gets damaged a little bit, if it has disease going on there, and you're still using it, you're still asking a lot of your brain, what your brain is going to do is just, it's going to rewire itself. Your brain has a certain amount of plasticity, meaning that it can still change, it can adjust, it can work around the disease. All right, so you really want to just keep using your brain. All right, you want to keep learning things as you get older. You don't just want to become a couch potato, just lying there, just staring at a screen all day. Did you know that staring at a TV screen is one brain lowest intensity brain activity you can do? Basically, it does not ask anything of your brain. It is a very brain dead activity, okay? So you want to do things that stimulate your brain a lot more. And another thing we want to look out for is just looking at your diet in general. So a lot of these, brain diseases, not just Alzheimer's, but like Parkinson's disease as well. There's a lot of research out there that shows that it might have some links with your diet in itself. So for example, one of the proteins in Parkinson's disease is very close to the proteins that you might find in something like milk. So what happens for a lot of people is that if they drink in a lot of milk and they have a leaky gut and their immune system has been exposed to this novel new protein, what happens then is that scientists believe that because of this exposure, because of this sensitization, your immune system will confuse itself and go like, oh, hey, this shouldn't be here, so I'm going to get rid of it. But then it turns around and it looks at that portion in your brain going like, hey, you look familiar. So then they attack that as well because they get confused, and that can lead to all sorts of other brain diseases. All right, and Alzheimer's disease, there seems to be a link with aluminium as well. So a lot of people, you want to avoid cooking too much with aluminium, like the foil or the cookware. You might want to avoid doing that as well. But again, the number one thing to avoid doing when you want to, prevent yourself from getting dementia or other similar diseases is to avoid allowing yourself to become, to do all sorts of brain dead activities. You want to keep learning. You gotta keep exercising that brain. All right, just remember, if you don't use it, you're gonna lose it.
Dr. EE, does consuming veggies raw instead of cooked have any benefits? Many Asians, especially women, do not tolerate raw veggies as well as they do cooked veggies.
All right, so when it comes to raw veggies or cooked veggies, what it really comes down to is personal preference. All right, so a lot of people say, oh, the raw veggie diet is somehow better than the cooked veggie diet because the raw veggie diet has a lot of nutrients that are destroyed by the cooking process. But then there's also a lot of nutrients that are released by the cooking process as well, and it's also easier on your digestive system to eat cooked veggies. And plus, if you have cooked veggies, let's be honest here, cooked veggies are just tastier to eat than raw veggies. Like, for example, have you ever had raw broccoli? It is not nice. Okay, it's edible, but it's not nice. But cooked broccoli, on the other hand, it's really good, right? So you have to just look at the vegetable itself. If you like eating the veggie raw, go ahead, all the more power to you. But if you like having the veggie cooked, go ahead, all the more power to you as well. So when it comes to eating vegetables, if you want to have a raw veggie diet, then okay, go ahead, have a raw veggie diet, but just be careful about the raw veggies you eat. Some of them can be eaten raw, other ones, they really should be cooked, okay? And just keep in mind how it affects your digestive system as well. For a lot of people, having a lot of vegetables, especially raw vegetables, might be too much for their digestive system to take all at once because of the high fiber contents. A lot of people, especially if they've had a low fiber diet for a long time, and if they suddenly switch to a super high fiber diet, what happens is that their digestive system complains. It's just like, what are you doing? I'm not used to this. And your digestive system will complain. It doesn't mean that it's bad for you. All it means is that you need to take it slower. Okay, so when you have a lot of fiber, a lot of what happens is that a lot of people might get, uncomfortable abdominal symptoms like bloating, or they might have more flatulence, or they might have other uncomfortable symptoms there. So what happens if you eat a lot of fiber way too fast is that, the healthy, friendly bacteria in your stomach, they break down fiber because fiber is one of their food sources. So as they break down fiber, they multiply a lot and they start producing all sorts of gases. And this is what causes a lot of the bloating and the flatulence and the uncomfortable tummy feelings that you might get if you have a lot of fiber too quickly. So what happens then is that you just have to take it slow. Increase your fiber content slowly over time and just realize that all of these symptoms is actually normal. It's quite common for a lot of people to get them if they take in a lot of fiber too fast, but you just got to keep going, okay? Just take it a little bit slow. And the next thing I want to mention is that when it comes down to raw or cooked, the most important thing is to just look at yourself, your personal preference. What I really want you to do is just to eat more plant foods. If eating them raw will get you to eat more, then please go ahead and eat them raw. If eating them cooked will get you to eat more, then please eat them cooked. Go ahead. I just want you to eat more fruits and vegetables. Okay, the cooking method is secondary to that. I just want you to focus more on improving your diet, on eating all of those different plant foods.
Dr. E, could you share more about polycystic kidney disease and high creatinine levels? Is it true that these patients must limit their protein intake? Also, some people will have a bloated stomach after taking soy products. Is it true that they should avoid soy completely?
Okay, let's go for the first question. Polycystic kidney disease. Polycystic kidney disease is a disease in which you have a lot of cysts inside of your kidneys. All right, so over time, this can negatively affect kidney function because after all, if you have a cyst, you don't have normal kidney tissue and you need normal kidney tissue for your kidney to function properly. So when it comes to polycystic kidney disease, a lot of the times it is a genetic problem. So it's down to your genes that you end up with polycystic kidney disease. For some people, they might have one kidney affected. For other people, they might have both kidneys affected. And it also depends on how severely your kidneys can be affected as well. So not all people with polycystic kidney disease will have impaired kidney function, but some people with polycystic kidney disease, they will end up with reduced kidney function. And a lot of people over time, they can end up with chronic kidney failure. All right, so when it comes to these high creatinine levels especially have a background of something like kidney disease. It can indicate an impaired kidney function. Right? So it's not the high creatinine levels itself that is causing anything negative. It is a sign that your kidneys isn't filtering correctly, because kidneys that are working properly should be able to filter out all of this creatinine out of your body so it doesn't have the chance to build up in your blood. All right, so for people who have a history of kidney disease, like polycystic kidney disease or other kidney diseases, or even diabetes, which very commonly causes kidney disease, it is an indication that they have impaired kidney function. All right, so it is a sign that you need to look deeper into what exactly is going on there. So for people who have an impaired kidney function, a lot of the times they do want, a lot of the kidney doctors will recommend that they do limit their protein intake. All right, but again, that also depends on the level of kidney dysfunction as well. The more severe the kidney dysfunction, the more their diet has to be limited. So it's not only protein. A lot of patients with very, very severe kidney dysfunction will even have to limit the amount of water they drink, even though you need water to live, just because your kidneys isn't capable of filtering out the water in their body. right? So it depends on the level of kidney dysfunction. Now, one of the things we do have to remember is that with protein and kidney disease is that the type of protein does matter. For example, a lot of research shows that animal protein can have negative effects on kidney function. This is just because protein is quite a large molecule. All right, there's nothing inherently bad about protein itself. It's just because when you have a kidney that's not working very well, it is difficult for that kidney to function out, to filter out these large proteins like protein molecules. Okay. But if you have protein from animal sources such as soy, that it doesn't harm your kidneys. So in fact, the American Diabetes Association has recommended that for diabetics who have kidney disease or have kidney dysfunction, one of the things that they can consider doing is switching from animal protein to plant protein, like soy protein, because then they still get their protein requirements, but without that negative effect on their kidney. But as always, if you have a severe disease like kidney disease, it's really important to work together with your doctor. Right? It's really important to have that harmonious communication with your doctor, and remember to advocate for your own health as well. On to the second question is, some people will have a bloated stomach after taking soy products. So soy product is still a plant product and they still have fiber in it. A lot of the times this bloating will come from people who, once again, take in too much fiber too fast. You might think, you know what, I don't think it's that much fiber, but maybe to them, maybe to their stomach, it is a little bit too much. All right, so the first thing I would think of is it might be too much fiber for them all at once, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. The bloating isn't harmful, it will go away, it's just uncomfortable. All right, so if you want to keep in taking soy products, then what you want to do is that you want to start off slow. Increase the fiber content of your diet slowly over time. All right, you can increase it slowly over time to avoid these uncomfortable feelings. But if you don't mind the bloating, then you know what, go ahead, have your soy. Because if it's not a problem to you, then it's not a problem. All right. So the other thing that might cause bloating is that some people can be allergic to soy, and allergy doesn't always mean anaphylactic shock. It can mean other more uncomfortable symptoms, especially when it comes to food allergies. All right. So if you have a food allergy to any type of food, it doesn't necessarily mean that that food is unhealthy or that it is, bad for everyone. It just means that for you in particular, your body can't handle that type of food. All right, so if it's because of fiber, then all you gotta do is just take it slow. If it's because of an allergy, then the only thing you can really do is to avoid it entirely. Okay, allergies are not something that you can deal with yourself by taking small amounts of food over time to build up a tolerance to it. It doesn't work like that, okay? It is the best way to deal with a food allergy is to avoid it entirely. So you want to look into why you have that bloated stomach.
Due to time constraints, the next question will be our last question. Dr. Yi, recently there have been many health fads surfacing like kombucha and ketones. May I know what exactly are they, and are they really good for our health?
Okay, so there's a lot of health fads out there. For example, like kombucha, I'll deal with these separately. Kombucha is a fermented drink. When it comes to the traditional kombucha, what you should be getting is that after you ferment it, you should have this like little sac or bubble of bacteria there. But in reality, what happens is that a lot of kombucha is made using cleaner methods because, as you know, you don't want bacteria or other microorganisms inside your food. So it is a fermented drink that is supposedly coming with all sorts of benefits out there. But like with any other fad diet out there, you want to take it with a grain of salt. When it comes to fermented foods, in general, we want to avoid a lot of fermented foods. For example, a lot of these fermented fish or fermented vegetables, that is very common in a lot of Asian cuisine. It can actually increase the risk of gastric cancers. And this is why the rate of gastric cancers in countries like Asia or Japan or even China are much higher than in Western countries because we eat a lot of fermented foods, like fermented vegetables, fermented fish, fermented meats, fermented beans. All of these fermented foods they're super tasty. And yes, they do have their own benefits in their own way. But again, it's that balance. They do have some nutrients to them, but they also have some other things that are not so good about them. So it's that balance of, oh, you know what? Do I really want to have too much of this one thing? And again, you have to look at it, is it kombucha as in how are you preparing it? Is it like super sweet kombucha? What other things have you put into it? Because there's a lot of varieties out there. But I think the healthiest drink out there is just water. All right, if you want to take in the healthiest drink, it is just water. Okay, and again, it's one of those things you want to look at if you're dead set on drinking a lot of kombucha. It's one of those things you got to look at as a whole. Is the benefits, does it outweigh the harms? Do I have anything, is there anything extra in there that I'm not so sure about? Is there a lot of different additives in there, to keep it fresh for longer or anything like that? Is there anything in there? You have to look at it as a whole. You can't just focus on one thing as well. Another thing that has been going around is something called the ketone diet, which again, another fad diet aimed towards burning fat or weight loss. All right. When it comes to any sort of weight loss diet, and there are a lot out there, okay? Any sort of fad diet or any sort of diet that recommends you to cut out entire food groups, you should always treat it with a healthy dose of suspicion, okay? Because the healthiest diet out there isn't going to be a fad diet. It isn't going to be a diet that you can, just follow a set prescribed steps of things, So when it comes to your diet, what I'm going to say is not going to be as easy as a fad diet, but it is going to be the healthiest option. When it comes to a diet, or if you want to lose weight, what you really have to do is you have to stop listening to people telling you exactly what to eat or exactly what to cut out, or how this food is good for you and this food is evil for you. It doesn't work like that, okay? When it comes to your diet, you got to look at it for yourself. You got to look at your current diet. You have to know yourself well. There's a lot of introspection that goes on, and that can be really tough and it takes a lot of time. What you got to do is got to look at yourself. Are you the sort of person who likes fish? Then you can work in more healthy fish into your diet. But if you hate fish and someone comes along and tells you, oh, you need to eat more steamed salmon for your diet, or you need to have steamed chicken breast. If you're the type of person who hates chicken breast, that sort of diet isn't going to work for you. All right, you might be able to stick with it for a little bit, but in the long term, what will most likely happen is that you're not going to stick with the diet, and I'm not going to blame you. People shouldn't be sticking with diets that they hate, because number one, it's just not going to stick for you. They're going to stray from the diet, and that's not going to be very good, and you're just going to hate life. Okay. A lot of joy in life comes from good food, but that doesn't mean that the good food has to be unhealthy foods. There's a lot of ways to get good food and still be healthy at the same time. So the best diet is one that you have tailored to yourself. Okay, it is one that you can stick with for the long term. Because when it comes to diets, if you do yo-yo diets, which is basically you diet for a little bit of time and then you stop dieting and you start going back to your normal eating habits, and then you start dieting again to try to lose that weight, and then you just stop again. That sort of dieting is also really unhealthy for you. Okay, so when it comes to the diet, it's not a fad diet that you gotta be looking out for. It's more like you gotta look at yourself. What are the sort of changes I can make to my diet to be healthier and which I can stick with? And I don't expect people to make really huge changes over time. Okay, you can start small. Baby steps is okay. If baby steps means that you're going to stick with it, if baby step means that it's more likely to be something that you're going to integrate into your daily life, then you know what, that's good. Like I mentioned before, it's like a marathon. You're not going to run a marathon from day one. Maybe day one, you might run for 1 mile and it's going to take you 20 minutes because you're super out of shape. But that doesn't mean that you should give up. It's okay. You keep working at it over time, and eventually you're going to be able to run like 6 kilometers or more, and you're going to be good at the end. You're not going to feel like you're dying. Okay? It's the same thing with our diet. If you are one of those people who know that you can make these big changes to your diet and you know that you will be able to stick with it, then good for you. If you are one of those people who wants to take it small at the same time, that's fine as well. You're making the effort and that's what counts. If it's things like eating, one more portion of vegetables a day, that's good. You're taking baby steps. And it could just be like eating just a little bit more every day and just adding up those changes over time and just make sure that it is changes that you can keep up. All right. So when it comes to your diet, please, it's an individual thing. The most important thing is that it has to be healthy and you have to stick with it. All right. And when it comes to these fad diets, a lot of the times, number one, they're not the healthiest diets out there, and it can be super difficult for people to stick with. So, again, the power all comes down to you. All right. You can decide for yourself which diet you like the best.
Thank you, Dr. Yi, for taking your time to educate us regarding health today.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for spending the time on your Saturday to listen to me go on and on about all of these health topics. I hope that it was both informative and entertaining, and I hope that you find it in you to help spread this knowledge to your friends and family.
Thank you for watching. This video will be accessible until 18th May 2022, 9 a.m. Take care and stay safe. Goodbye.